It's time for hard truths and an honest discussion about our own responsibility as it comes to the world around us. And this stems from an image that has been circulating of Bethany McGee, this poor young woman. It breaks my heart. It terrifies me as a new father with a young daughter. It terrifies me. Bethany McGee, for those that aren't familiar, was sitting on a train in Chicago. She was 26 years old when a career criminal with 72 prior arrests poured a bottle of gasoline over her head. She fought him off and fled. He ignited the bottle, walked towards her, and lit her up. She's in critical condition, and I could be wrong about this. I believe there are people saying that she's suffering 60% burns. That sounds like I don't know how you survive that. I don't think people understand how lethal burns on a large portion of your body can be. This young woman here in this image is a profile photo that is circulating. I have seen this image circulating around. It is her with a Black Lives Matter ring around her profile picture. And there are many that are mocking her, saying, you supported this, and it was these policies, in fact, that resulted in this man being released from jail. I do not believe it is fair. No one expects to be immolated alive by pure evil. However, and that however is a very strong however, let's get into the truth about responsibility, the banality of evil, and the consequences thereof. And I'll start first by showing you the story. Bethany McGee, 26, is identified as Chicago victim set on fire on CTA train by serial thug with 72 arrests. He was charged with terrorism. The reason being, this took place on transit. And I believe that Secretary Duffy has made this point already as it pertained to Irina Zarutska. Attacking people in the transit system is terrorizing people. It's people being scared to move about using public transport creates very serious national level problems. And for this reason, they are charging these individuals with terrorism. And I think it's fair to say why. This man didn't just steal a person, stab her, or murder her. It wasn't reckless violence like a Chicago thing where it's give me your phone and then it gets out of hand. This is a man who went to a gas station, filled up a bottle with gasoline, went onto the train looking to torture. He didn't seek just to end a life. He sought to create maximum suffering. And that's what he did to this poor young woman. Now, again, I highlight this image. Black Lives Matter. Because as it turns out, this man with 72 arrests was released because of these policies, that our criminal justice system is racist. And so that if there's a man in jail, we have to let him go because it's the system that did him wrong. In fact, the judge has expressed as such. Quote, it is devastating that a career criminal with 72 prior arrests is now accused of attacking 26-year-old Bethany McGee on Chicago's L train and setting her on fire. Secretary Duffy said, this would never have happened if this thug had been behind bars at Chicago. Let's repeat offenders roam the streets. Duffy said of suspect Lawrence Reed, 50, who is facing federal terrorism charges in connection with a senseless fire attack. Here's an image from Facebook of Bethany McGee holding a cat. This poor woman. Chicago's carelessness is putting the American people at risk. No one should ever have to fear for their life on the subway, Duffy said, lambasting the Windy City's soft-on-crime policies that let a dangerous convicted criminal roam free. Reed approached McGee, who was sitting with her back to the crazed firebug on the train in downtown Chicago around 9 p.m., according to the criminal complaint. He then removed the cap from a bottle of liquid, pouring it all over her head and body. McGee fled, but Reed caught up with her and set the bottle, which fell to the floor, on fire. He then retrieved it and used it to set her ablaze. Reed was engulfed in flames, but somehow managed to exit the train before collapsing on the platform, where Good Samaritans stepped in to help her as she was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Reed was spotted on surveillance footage at Chicago's gas station purchasing gasoline, which he put into a plastic beverage bottle roughly 20 minutes before the attack. He was arrested the next day and hit with federal terror charges. He's in the courtroom screaming, I plead guilty, I plead guilty. He knew what he did. He knew what he wanted to do. He planned the whole thing, and these people let him go. I believe these judges need to be removed right now. But we have pathetic, weak leaders in this country. And I am sick of hearing from these individuals this whole rift on the right debate about whether or not we will be men of action, whether we will tell these people, these fucking demons, we will not tolerate this. But we live in a society of sick, weak people. I'm not going to stand here before you and claim I am the best of them. No, I'd just say maybe marginally better than many of these individuals. But you know what? Maybe it's true. You don't see me running for office. But I tell you this, there are those of us that at least in our communities, we will not stand idly by and watch demons torture, maim, immolate, and murder our children. So I give a warning, as should any strong man, to anyone who dare do this to one of our friends, family members, community members, or otherwise. But in Chicago, you're not so lucky. And you know what? There is a degree of responsibility you bear in these cities. And I am not playing stupid games. It's time to be brutally honest. Jeremy Hambley, he tweeted, her father is a Sunday school teacher. She is heavily involved in the church. She supported Black Lives Matter. She was burned alive by a black man on a train who had been arrested 72 times prior. Sour Patch Lid says she went along with the crowd. That doesn't mean she deserved this, Jeremy. I don't think Jeremy said that. I think Jeremy is making an important point that needs to be made. I will stress this again. This poor family, this poor woman, it shouldn't have happened. But you choose to live in ignorance. You choose. I'm not going to play these stupid games the feminists play. I live in a much more brutal reality. And that brutal reality is that psychopath demons will pour gasoline on you and burn you alive. Does it happen every day? It doesn't. Maybe around the world to an extent it does, but in this country it doesn't. So we don't want to live in fear and paranoia. But this woman, had she not been living in this ignorance, would not have been so careless and so callous. Callous is the wrong word. I apologize. She wouldn't have been so careless. Now, I can already hear the moralizing from even on the right. It's not her fault. I don't play these games. If you choose to go to an ATM at 3 a.m. in a seedy neighborhood and you get robbed, first and foremost, the criminals are to blame. Of course, we all understand that. But when do we say you make choices that increase your risk and you are responsible for the choices you make? If you decided to walk into the woods, smothered in honey, carrying salmon, do you think anyone would sympathize with you if a bear mauled you to death and ate the salmon? No, they'd probably say, were you trying to make that happen? So why is it that we have this narrative of, well, men should be taught not to rape? We get it. We all get it. We are strong men. We are good men. We understand. There are bad men. There are evil men. They rape. Were it that men were all saints, we wouldn't need police. We wouldn't need guns at all. And so my point is this. I don't assign blame to this young woman for what a dangerous psychopath did to her. But I will not excuse the banality of evil. Her father, a Sunday school teacher. She involved in the church, and she posted this profile photo. Now, there are a few views on this. As Lydia pointed out, she was just going along with the crowd. I don't excuse that ever. No, I love that photo of when everybody in Germany was doing the Roman salute to Hitler, one man stood with his arms crossed. Because he knew, he understood, and he made a choice. If evil is all around you, and you know, and you choose to march alongside it, this is the world you have created. If you are in your ignorance, I do not absolve you of your responsibilities to be engaged in civics. Bethany should never have posted this profile photo. But I get it. So many did. And they did it because they were scared that someone would hurt them. They would lose their jobs. But I got to be honest, I don't think this young woman was really under any serious pressure to do this. So I say this. As it pertains to the singular moment, I am enraged. I don't blame this poor young woman in any way that a psychopath did this to her. We shouldn't have to live this way. But in the grand scheme and the big picture of this country, it is time we all recognize the banality of evil is all around us. The people that would march in lockstep, raising the red salute, the communist fist, and I'm supposed to be told they didn't know better. You make that choice. And if you don't know what you're doing, you have made the choice to be ignorant. No one's forcing you to throw a Roman salute in the air. You have every opportunity to learn about what it is you're supporting. One person says, did they ever figure out, this is Mr. Scott, the story of there being an argument that started this? I'm curious what she said. If anything, she was supposed to be an ally, but we know most of their allies are racist. I believe that was a false story. From the bits of the surveillance footage that we've gotten, she's just sitting there and he dumps it on her head. I don't think there was an argument. I think he walked over, dumped it on her head, she screamed, pushed him, and people thought that was the argument. She fled. No one on this train to protect her, to help her. And you know what? What's horrifying is there was one other guy, two other guys. Look at this. This person's hiding. It appears she's hiding here as he approaches her to set her on fire. And there was no one else on the train. I'm not playing this game, guys. You know, when it comes to a funeral, people say that you don't speak ill of the dead. And I can respect that for a variety of reasons. But what if you're at war? When do you recognize that your refusal to engage in the facts and logic and facts will result in more of this? Several years ago, a woman on a train in Philadelphia was raped, actually raped. A man grabbed her, threw her down, and raped her as people stood by and watched. Did they stop him? No, they filmed. There's a variety of reasons for this to happen. One, what if the guy's got a weapon? A knife could end your life and there's nothing you can do effectively. I mean, I have to be honest. If a person has a knife, what do you do? Seriously. I don't think people understand how serious a knife attack is. One person with a knife can kill a dozen people very quickly and cause serious lasting injuries. And what do you do? But you know what? Fear to oneself, historically, hasn't been the biggest deterrent. There are great men of honor who have thrown themselves into burning buildings. They do this every day to save children, to save innocent victims, even to save other men. Because it's within us. But then there is another problem. You're not allowed. You're not allowed. We all saw what happened to Daniel Penny and Daniel Perry. Let's not forget Perry. Penny was on a train when a man was threatening to murder people, so he subdued him. This man died. They tried to put him in prison for it. So if I was on a train and a guy had a bottle of gasoline and was going to immolate a woman, what do you think a reasonable person would say? I would not be surprised to find that a reasonable person would do nothing. They'd say, not only will he kill me, I'll go to prison after the fact. If I stop this deranged murderer, I will go to prison. And why? Why will you go to prison? Because of this image right here. Because everyone said, we agree, we consent. Now again, I think it's fine to point out there is the granular and there's the avalanche. But the snowflake never blames itself for the avalanche. So I say this. This was wrong. This is the red salute. This is the communist fist. The judge who released this man over and over again, it's because he was, I guess, a victim of the system. Clearly he wasn't. Clearly he is a deranged, demonic psychopath. Now, of her family, I have questions. When did we all decide to ignore the world around us? When did we decide that everything was perfect and everything was safe? I don't get it. I know everybody knows I'm from Chicago, and this is fascinating to me because, this never happened to me and my friends. And worse things happened to some of the people I knew, usually drug overdoses. I'd been mugged once. Didn't work out well for the mugger. A cop showed up. But I was aware of my surroundings. And I also didn't have any money anyway, so he wouldn't get anything from me. I've told this many times, and people probably just say I'm wrong or I'm stupid or otherwise, but growing up in Chicago, there were, we had muggings in our neighborhood. We had 47th Street to the north, which divided the immigrant white area and Latino a little bit from the black neighborhood. You go north of 47th from where we lived by Midway Airport, and it was the LeClaire Courts. It was the notorious gang territory. I think the neighborhood was like 100% black. And these people would come across from 47th South, and they'd rob us and mug us. And these things were known in our neighborhood. There was gangs all over the place. We were told, if anyone tries to mug you, give them whatever they want, just give in. And I always said, that's the stupidest thing imaginable. It's just the stupidest thing imaginable. And my view was, these guys who are trying to mug you, they're just trying to get a quick hit. They don't want to fight anybody. They want an easy target. And when the city says, just give in, they have officially declared the formal policy of the people of Chicago, it's to do whatever you want. I had a different approach. I said, kill me. Bro, I'm from the South Side. We didn't grow up in luxury. We weren't kings. We didn't have anything to lose. And my attitude was very much, if you want what I got, you're going to try to kill me before you get it. I don't care. I don't live that way. And their response is going to be like, I'll find somebody else. And that typically was the case. If you go to someone and say, you put one hand on me and I will break your fucking fingers. And they'll say, I'll go rob somebody who's going to give up. So the question was, were you willing to fight? Because if you were, people didn't want to fight you. They wanted easy targets. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I had numerous experiences where people tried to rob me and threaten me, but my attitude was always, I just refuse to live this way. And there's one thing that helps us in this regard. And I do have the one anecdote of when I got mugged and told the guy, I don't have anything. You can't have anything from me. And they do this thing in Chicago where they say, can I have your money? Hey, pull out your wallet. How much money do you have? Can I have it? And they try to argue they're panhandling. And sometimes it works. In this instance, a guy, he was like 6'4", tall guy, walked up next to me and said, hey, man, you got any money? Let me get it. And I said, I don't have any money. And he was like, come on, man, I know you got money. Let me get the money. I'm trying to do the right thing here. And then I laughed. I said, bro, I don't got any money. I pulled out my wallet, dead empty. And he's like, you think I'm stupid? I know you got money in your shoes. Like, I got a knife, bro. I got a knife. So why don't you just do the right thing? And I laughed. I was like, bro, I don't got any money. And I wouldn't give it to you anyway. And I'm not here to pretend like, I got no fight with the guy or anything. No, what happened actually was a cop grabbed him from behind, spun him around and slammed him into an iron fence and screamed, not in my town. True story. This guy wasn't going to get anything from me because I didn't have anything to give him. This is what's going to happen. I wasn't going to give in to him. And, I'll say this too. There are going to be people who comment like, you think you're so tough, Tim? Well, I think I'm tough enough. Go watch the episode of Tucker Carlson where I was in Boston and two things happened. One, I got mocked for, but, either way, I got a temper. The first was that an Antifa guy started swinging at my face, trying to make me flinch, swinging at the camera, doing things like that. And I stood there, took a defensive stance, and I said, do it. And he didn't. Now my blood's boiling. And then this dude came up and pulled my hat off. And I said something to the effect of, I'm going to knock your fucking teeth out or something like that. Yeah, he pulled my hat off. That's not the reason why I was ridiculously angry. Somewhat to a degree. I don't know. It's not that big of a deal. The issue was I just had these Antifa guys threatening me and my blood was boiling because I can't do anything. They wanted me to throw the first punch so that the cops would come and arrest me. I'm just there filming. And then some piece of shit comes up and says, I'm going to take advantage of the situation knowing nothing's going to happen. I can do whatever I want. And if this guy crossed me in any other circumstance, I'd have broken his nose and knocked his teeth out. I get very angry at this stuff. I don't think I'm completely out of control, but I get pretty fucking angry. And I'm swearing now because I am sick of this shit. So forgive me and forgive the cussing, but I have to. These jurisdictions are controlled by demons. Chicago's been under Democrat rule for 100 years. And with all due respect to this family, they should know. And so I don't understand. I don't. Again, I'm not putting any blame on this family as individuals for this attack that happened to this woman. And she deserves justice. She never deserved this. No one deserves this. Seriously, no one deserves this. I think this family was well aware of the dangers. But the question I then have is, will we recognize young women can't be walking around alone, going on these trains? This is the world that these liberals vote for. And I don't know about this family individually. But I'm going to tell my daughter this. You cannot expect to go into Chicago. You're buying a lottery ticket every time that you will be murdered, shot, raped, killed, or otherwise. Same is true for men, but women are susceptible. Men are more likely to be the victims of violent crime. Women are more likely to be, they're less likely to be able to defend themselves from these crimes. If you're going to go to Chicago, I'd recommend you have some means of defending yourself and don't go alone. But in this modern era, this feminist world that we live in, the argument is you can't blame the victims. It's not their fault. Well, I'll tell you this. If you jump into a river full of piranha in the Amazon and you get ripped to shreds, I'm going to be like, someone should have told the piranhas not to maul you. Demons exist. This man who did this is a demon. When did we live in this world where you could just do whatever you wanted without consequence and there was no expectation of risk or violence? So right now there are people who are mocking her over this BLM post that she made. That's not okay. For real, their post being like, this is what you get, you supported it, it's the world you want. I mean, this person right here posted this image. There's a woman saying, vote blue no matter who, defund the police, Black Lives Matter, and then she gets punched in the face by a black guy, another black guy is filming it. This actually happened. This was an actual story. A woman got punched in the face, and she had been known to have been a BLM supporter. You advocate for violent, dangerous criminals to be released, and then they will do this. At some point, there needs to be a reorientation. There need to be strong men who are willing to say no. And the question is, what do you do in a place like Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles? So forgive me, my friends, if I say I'm leaving, and I left Chicago. I didn't only leave Chicago because of crime, but it was a big factor. Opportunity was also an issue. The city, there's a lot of great things about it, but I don't want to live there. What can I do to bring about a change in Chicago to an entrenched Democrat political machine? Here's the point. I won't speak of this family, but I can tell you that there are many families just like hers. They are conservative-leaning, they are Christian, they are city-dwelling or suburbs, and they'll say they're Christians, but they will defend and advocate for these policies to the point of violence. I'm not talking about her family. I'm saying I'm in Chicago. I go to these people and I say, guys, this doesn't make sense. It's going to get bad. It's going to get worse. And they get mad at you. So at a certain point, what do? I think the reality is this. You don't really change the minds of individuals. Their politics don't change all that much. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this family's politics don't change all that much either. They just rationalize it, say, well, it was one bad guy. One bad guy shouldn't, condemn a whole system. But there are many young men that are learning about this story. And to those young men, you have an option to take. Be a Democrat and hide and keep your head down and hope when the demons come, they don't come for you, or you're hiding well enough that they can't find you. Or you can be a man of action, and you can say, I will not live this way. And you can do something. With all due respect to myself, I understand I'm not running for office, but I am speaking out in such a way that has resulted in death threats upon me and my family, who are none too happy about any of this, and honestly would prefer anonymity and a quiet life. Every day I make these videos and I say things that piss people off. There is danger. And there is being a leader in a political sense to try and bring about change, and there is being willing to stand up and say enough. So I'm not going to pretend to be your leader, but I think it's fair to say to a certain degree, my show and I have influence. And with that influence, I speak to all of you. Who will you be when you get older, young men? Will you be men of action, or will you be a coward? Because cowards have wrought this world we live in. Again, I understand that normies don't pay attention and don't care. But I expect of her father and the fathers of Chicago, I expect of all of them to be paying attention to what is going on, to be apprised to the judges that are releasing these criminals, to have seen Irina Zarutska, Lake and Riley. And I am saddened that even after those attacks, this woman got on a train by herself, had her back to this guy. I mean, let's be honest. There are things she could have done to have mitigated this had she only known. She could have not gotten on the front train. She could have, I don't know if she was on the front train actually, because she could have jumped train carts. I don't know why she didn't. Panic. But maybe she was at the front of the train. Maybe she was asking the conductor. I don't know. When we look at the photo here, you can't really see, but for those that aren't familiar, this little room right here in Chicago, the doors go between trains. You can open it and jump to the next train. If she had, look, this person's just hiding. I don't know who that person is. This person is backing away. And you know what's really sad is that this man right here is not covered in gasoline. He could have knocked that fire out of that guy's hand and saved that girl's life. This woman could have gotten on at the other end and stayed as far away from these people as possible and always maintained and known where her exits are. When he doused her, she could have pulled the ripcord, which would have stopped the train, and she could have jumped out. I don't know if it's the best idea, but it may be better. Well, actually, if she's on an elevated portion, if she's in the subway, she could. On that elevated portion, you ain't jumping out. I got to be honest, though. Yeah. The question is, broken legs, jumping off the L platform, it's like, 15, 20 feet? Or burns all across your body. I've talked to my wife quite a bit about all of this. There was a story where a woman was shopping with her, I think it's 3-year-old. She went to the car, opened it up, and started putting groceries in. And a black woman walked up with a knife and murdered her 3-year-old on the spot. We've covered that story. I talked to my wife about it and said, always be aware of your surroundings. Always load baby in first and close the door. I don't want anything to happen to her either. But obviously, we both live to protect our child. Get to your car, put your baby in the car seat, close the door, load your groceries up, and trust no one. We shouldn't have to live this way, but the reality is that we do. With all the news that's been going on, my wife has been very concerned because we get death threats from me doing this job. And I said, I can't control the state of the world. This is reality. We don't live in this environment, in this social environment where you are free from harm at all times. No, this is the reality of Chicago and these big cities. So, what do? You live like at any point, these people will murder you. There's a reality to it. I know the comments are already saying right now, what does it mean, these people? Well, I mean criminals, to be completely honest. But this is one of the reasons why we see Nick Fuentes ascendant. And they're conservatives who live in crackpot Wally world who don't want to accept it. Evil is all around us. If you ignore it, if you pretend like it will go away, it'll just get worse. Nick has made videos where he's talked about not wanting to live near black people for this reason. And he said specifically that's not to say that individual black people are bad, but that everyone talks about it privately to each other, but no one is willing to say it publicly because they're scared of being racist. Well, you know what? That resonates with young men. And Nick's a guy from Chicago, in the Chicago suburbs. He lives in places like this. He's from Berwyn, which I don't know if he's from Berwyn. He lives in Berwyn. And forgive me, but that's very, very public knowledge. I grew up about, I think it's probably like 5 miles away, maybe. Berwyn, just south on Harlem. Not that far away from where, it's a suburb. I grew up in the city. And I'll tell you this. The people I grew up around in the city would say similar things like, look, you don't blame an individual because someone else of some other race is committing crimes. Everybody in my neighborhood knew. The cops didn't want to intervene with the crime committed by these black gang members because they were scared of being called racist. So they'd usually just poo-poo it. Everybody in my neighborhood had concerns. North of 47th was the gangs, and it was all black people. And so the assumptions they made is that when you saw black people coming into our neighborhood, there was a high likelihood of crime. And that's the unfortunate reality of racial segregation. So again, I'm not saying any individual should be blamed based on the actions of a larger group or anything like that. Certainly not. But when you get on a train by yourself, I think what's happening is that people are recognizing crime statistics. Hey, look, man, the guy who tried mugging me was a white dude. But I think it's silly to try and then claim, and anybody can be mugged. There is a reality to a disproportionate level of crime committed by young black men, particularly in Chicago. And these liberal people, they want to say, like, I don't want to be racist. It breaks my heart, it really does. To know that anybody, for any reason, because of the way they look, would be mistreated or judged. At the same time, there's an absurdity in our culture that refuses to recognize higher rates of crime from certain minority groups. In Chicago, it's Latinos, and it's young black men particularly, and it's young Latino men are committing most of the crimes. Certainly white guys are too. I'd argue be vigilant of anybody. Like, I got mugged by a white guy, you know. But if you're not going to be honest about these things, you're going to end up seeing Nick Fuentes gaining more and more prominence. I think Nick is certainly wrong and takes the Israel stuff to an extreme end. Certainly, I agree that there's foreign influence in this country. But the principal thing that I believe gets Nick followers is talking about things like this. Acknowledging hidden truths. And that is, if you're in Chicago, you are more likely to be robbed or murdered by a black man than a white man. That is not to say black people are all bad. But you see, the media will lie about it. They'll give you excuses for it. But for someone growing up in Chicago, speaking to young suburbanite white dudes, they all know it, but no one will say it. They're going to follow Nick. And then when Nick says stuff like he thinks Hitler is cool, they're going to say, well, everything else was a lie. There are a lot of challenges we face in this world. My view is that we don't want to live in a racist society. We don't want to live in a society that you see a black guy walking down the street and you think ill of him simply for being black. That is wrong. Same is true for a white guy to assume he's an oppressor. That's wrong. Or an Asian guy. That he's good at math. That's wrong. No, actually, I love that people think Asians are great at math. Because they are. Some things are okay. Jokes are always okay. We don't want to live in a society that holds people as second-class citizens. At the same time, the idea that you would release this man, and here's the ultimate point I'm making about the racism stuff, that this guy, after being arrested 72 times, would be released because he's black, is psychotic. When are we going to stand up and recognize we all have a responsibility in maintaining the world around us? I will not tolerate the banality of evil. I will call it out. If you are posting BLM signs, look at Vivek Ramaswamy. He refused to engage, and they came for him. Don't stand with the cult, because they will bring destruction and suffering to you. Are people going to get the message? I'm going to wrap it up there, my friends. It's so brutal. I know. Thanksgiving is coming up. We're off the rest of the week for Timcast IRL. I may come in for morning segments. It just really depends on the cycle. But I'm going to wrap it up there. Smash the like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all next time.